Welcome to Ancient Stoic Secrets, where we uncover the unspoken truths that shape a man's quiet strength. Today, we're diving into a story many older men live but rarely speak about. Why they walk away, not in anger, but in stillness. This isn't about bitterness or blame. It's about the silent wisdom that comes with age. If you've ever felt that quiet pull to step back from a relationship, not because you didn't care, but because something deeper changed within you, this is for you. You're not broken. You're awakening. You're not quitting. You're choosing peace. Let's explore the deeper reasons why older men disappear without a fight, and why that may be the most powerful statement of all. 1. The weight of being misunderstood. As men grow older, they begin to value emotional clarity more than ever. It's not just about being loved anymore. It's about being understood without always having to explain. Imagine coming home after a long day only to find that your silence is labeled as distance, or your calmness mistaken for indifference. Over time, those misinterpretations become exhausting. For older men, constant miscommunication feels like an invisible war they didn't sign up for. They don't yell or argue anymore. They simply go quiet. Not because they're passive, but because they know peace is better than proving a point. When understanding dies, so does connection. And instead of battling to be seen, many men choose solitude over misunderstanding. 2. Exhaustion from repeating themselves. There comes a point when a man realizes he's having the same argument on loop. He's explained his emotional needs, drawn his boundaries, asked for space or respect, yet nothing changes. Each conversation feels like déjà vu. This repetition doesn't just frustrate him, it wears him down. Like water slowly eroding stone, emotional repetition chips away at his will. Older men often don't leave out of sudden anger. They leave because they're emotionally exhausted. It's not about pride, it's about survival. When every discussion becomes a cycle instead of a solution, he learns that silence preserves more of his soul than shouting ever will. And so one day he just stops trying. Not because he doesn't care, but because he has cared too long. 3. Peace is priceless. With youth comes the energy for chaos, but with age comes the craving for calm. Older men have fought enough battles in life, with careers, health, family, and they've learned that emotional peace isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Peace allows space for creativity, presence, and healing. When a relationship becomes a source of stress more than support, he no longer asks, "Can we fix this?" He asks, "Is this costing me peace?" If the answer is yes, he quietly exits, not as a punishment but as a self-rescue. A man who has seen life's storms no longer volunteers for emotional hurricanes. He doesn't need fireworks anymore. He needs a fire that warms, not burns, and he'll protect that peace at all costs. 4. They know their time is limited. A man in his 50s or 60s begins to feel the weight of time differently. He doesn't just count years, he measures meaning. Every day wasted in emotional chaos feels like a day stolen from his potential peace. He's no longer trying to save people who don't want saving. He's no longer explaining himself to those who choose not to understand. This awareness drives him to prioritize what brings depth, not drama. He realizes that peace, health, and presence are priceless, and that some relationships are simply too expensive. When a connection feels more draining than enriching, he lets go, not in bitterness, but in acceptance. He walks away not because he has less time left, but because he wants what time he does have to actually matter. 5. They've outgrown emotional games. Older men no longer have the patience for ambiguity. They don't want to decode texts, navigate hot and cold behavior, or play emotional detective. He's lived through enough to know that real love doesn't require constant testing. He seeks directness. A yes that means yes. A no that isn't laced with manipulation. If he senses that he's being played, he doesn't confront it. He walks. Not because he's emotionally unavailable, but because he's emotionally aware. He knows his worth, and he's no longer willing to negotiate it with someone who confuses love with control. The older man isn't here to win games, he's here to build peace. 6. Emotional intimacy feels absent. Physical connection once ruled his relationships, but now emotional presence is what he longs for. A man can share a bed and still feel profoundly alone. When he opens up about his fears, or when he's quiet after a hard day, and those moments are dismissed or minimized, a chasm grows. He doesn't need constant conversation. He needs to feel emotionally safe. When vulnerability is met with criticism, he withdraws. Over time, he stops sharing. Then he stops caring. This isn't about revenge. It's a return to wholeness. The mature man values being felt over being fixed. And when emotional intimacy dies, the relationship follows silently. 7. He sees through words. Older men have heard it all. The apologies, the promises, the "I'll change" moments. With time, they stop responding to what's said and start observing what's done. When words become a distraction from reality, he pays closer attention to actions. He no longer needs confrontation to confirm betrayal. He reads inconsistencies like a seasoned reader revisiting an old novel. If your words say love, but your actions say convenience, he takes note. He won't argue. He won't accuse. He simply starts building the emotional exit ramp. For him, truth isn't what you say, it's what you repeat. And if what repeats is disrespect, he's already halfway gone. 8. They've been through real loss. Older men have tasted real grief, loss of parents, friends, mentors, even past versions of themselves. These losses give them perspective. They've held hands in hospital rooms, buried loved ones, watched dreams fade. Compared to that, petty arguments and power plays feel weightless. So when a relationship starts to feel like an emotional battlefield over who texted first or who forgot a birthday, they disengage. Not because they don't care, but because they know life's too short to sweat the small stuff. He's survived too much to let small storms shake him. So instead of raising his voice, he lowers his presence and walks away with grace. 9. They've reclaimed their identity. For years, many men live as versions of themselves shaped by others' expectations. The good son, the responsible husband, the reliable provider. But there comes a moment, often quiet, often alone, when he asks, "Who am I outside of what I do for others?" That's when something shifts. He stops sacrificing his soul for the sake of social roles. He no longer contorts himself to be who someone else needs him to be. He wants to be known, not just needed. If a relationship suppresses his voice or spirit, he lets it go. Because finally, he's choosing himself, and that's not selfish. That's freedom. 10. Silence becomes their language. Silence can be a scream. For older men, it becomes their truest language. Not because they lack words, but because words no longer work. They've written long texts, had long talks, and nothing changed. Now they let silence speak. You'll notice it in the missed calls, the distant eyes, the one-word answers. This isn't detachment out of spite, it's preservation. When a man stops explaining, it's often because he has explained for years. His silence isn't empty, it's full of things he knows won't be heard. So when he goes quiet, listen closely. That silence is telling you everything. 11. He realizes he wasn't loved, just used. Eventually, a man starts noticing the conditions attached to affection. When he's giving, supportive, paying, fixing, love flows. But when he sets a boundary or says no, the warmth vanishes. That's when he realizes, this isn't love, this is use. He was valuable only in his function, not his being. And that cuts deep. He feels invisible, not for what he lacks, but for who he is. The man who once showed up fully now feels like a service provider. And once that clarity hits, he doesn't cause a scene. He causes a shift. He slowly exits, choosing dignity over dependency, self-respect over servitude. 12. He wants depth, not just a role. Older men don't want to be reduced to a job title in their relationships. Protector, provider, problem solver. Yes, they can be those things, but they also want to be seen, felt, and understood. They want deep conversations, shared silence, mutual growth. If a relationship treats them like an ATM or emotional crutch, it drains them. They crave a partner, not a project. Someone who chooses them for who they are, not what they do. When a relationship becomes a duty rather than a delight, they leave. Not because they're cold, but because they're done settling for shallow connections. They want soul, not just structure. Subscribe to ancient Stoic secrets. If any of these truths resonated, know this: you're not alone. More men are waking up to their worth, their peace, and their path. At Ancient Stoic Secrets, we give voice to the silent strength many men carry. If this spoke to you, hit subscribe. Join a brotherhood of clarity, calm, and quiet power, because your peace is your power, and it's time the world respected both.